So anybody who follows me on social media intensively or who has known me for years before I started YouTube, who's followed me, in the past, you know that I grew up a huge fan of hip hop. I love rap music, I love hip hop. I love the culture, especially from the 90s and in the early 2000s. And I always, it's one of the things that I kind of grew up with, and I know a lot of you feel the same. Well, my buddy MC Headcase, who actually has an album out, it's called Lunatic Fringe, a self-portrait. I'm going to link it down below so you guys can check that out. He forwarded this article to me on Twitter, and I wanted to do a quick video about it. And the article is from Genius.com, and he's talking about Dragon Ball's influence on a generation of hip-hop artists. And basically, this guy Gabbles tracks all of the lyrical references that he could find linking to Dragon Ball. Now here we have a chart. This is a really cool article. It's really kind of neat in that we have a chart looking at all the different references and all the times that phrases from Dragon Ball have been used in hip-hop music. Starting with, of course, the word Dragon Ball. And of course, the most overused is Super Saiyan, because that's such an iconic thing, such an iconic power-up. And in the article, he goes into talking about Dragon Ball, the series, and, I don't really like the fact that he calls Dragon Ball Z a spin-off. That's wrong. Dragon Ball Z is not a spin-off of Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball Z is a continuation of Dragon Ball. It's not a spin-off. That's not the right phrase. So there's a little bit of a mistake there, but he talks a little bit about the history of Dragon Ball, and then he goes into, RZA, and I've heard this before. It's been many years. RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan, who talked about, he compared the story of Dragon Ball to the journey of the black man in America. And I think what he's referring to is the fact that, and I've made this comparison before, is that there's a link, there's an homage, I guess you could say, from Toriyama, where it appears like Frieza is kind of like the representative of like the slave owner, and the Saiyans are like the slaves, until of course there's a rebellion that happened many years later. I've always picked up on that interesting little piece of subtext that Toriyama has kind of thrown in there. I've always noticed also the skin color of Frieza, the fact that he's very pale. It might not be done on purpose, but there's definitely a connection there. And he talks about that here in the article. And then they talk about, GT. It's not really too much there, but what I think is interesting is this chart right here, which he talks about like when Dragon Ball was airing in Japan and when it aired in the US. This information's a little, because Dragon Ball did air there, but he doesn't cover Harmony Gold, but I guess Harmony Gold doesn't really matter too much. But here in this article, he goes into all these different, I guess you can call it, and this is my favorite part of the article, by the way, these different homages, whether it be from production, like, beats, or whether it be from actual rhymes. Like, for example, right here in this RZA song, Must Be Bobby, he says, I keep rice soaked in coconut milk mixed with tofu, sit in the sun 6 hours and charge up like Goku. Like, that's one of the earliest references to Dragon Ball, which was, right around this time. And the article goes into all these different, the guy really did his homework when it comes to this, all these different, I guess, takeoffs of Dragon Ball. MF Doom sampled a Kikuchi song from one of the cooler movies. J Live, I get up in the zone like a Super Saiyan, Saiyan, like, that's, that one's okay. It could have been better. I push key like Dragon Ball Z, Lupe Fiasco. There's so many references, so I want to go ahead and put the link to this article in the description for y'all to check out, because it's interesting that you have all these artists, throwing homages to Dragon Ball. And the thing is, I think what the article was kind of saying here with this timeline up here is that there's a correlation between Dragon Ball airing on television and these artists coming out, but I somewhat disagree with that, because the thing about Dragon Ball is that the artists, a lot of them grew up on the series, either watching it on Cartoon Network or syndication. A lot of them were kind of like us, that we watched it on Toonami. I'm sure some of them watched it in Japanese too. Everybody has their own way of watching it. So a lot of times, even if you see a Dragon Ball reference, like in the modern era, it might just be something they watched when they were a kid. It's not like Kai, like all of a sudden created new lyrics for people. But there are so many. Look at it. If you look at it right here, there are so many references to hip-hop songs from different eras and different artists. I mean, you know, dying laughing like Phil and saying something about blonde hair. Just, it's such a cool article. I'm really happy that Genius put it out, and I wanted to show this to you guys. If you are a hip-hop fan or a rap fan, just a quick video to kind of let you know like that there are so many references, and I'm so happy that this guy collected them all together. Like, you know what I mean? That he put them all together. And there's probably more. I mean, there's probably more from some of the lesser known artists out there that, you know, this gentleman, Gables, I think Gabbles. I rarely go on his website, so I don't know his name. There's probably more that he didn't even know about. Again, this information here is not the best. But the reality is Dragon Ball has had an impact on hip-hop culture. I mean, it has. Maybe not, you know, a thorough impact to where every rapper talks about it, but a lot of them have. I mean, and this is the evidence right here. Anyways, guys, I hope you liked this little quick video. Go ahead and punch that like button. Subscribe if you have not, because we have a lot of stuff going on this week with new manga chapters coming out in Japan. I believe the Yamcha Volume 2 and Chapter 20. I think we're at 20 right now, right? The Dragon Ball Super manga will be coming out. So absolutely keep an eye out on Geekdom 101 because I'll be bringing you all that information. Plus, I got some badass videos coming out this week, including one where we talk about Master Roshi and what he could do in the Universe Survival arc. So those of you out there wondering, why is Roshi on the team? He seems like he's not that strong. He seems like he can't contribute. I got an idea. So thank you so much. While you wait for that to post, check out some other videos I got on the channel here that I hope you guys enjoy, including some older videos I wanted to bring to the forefront that maybe many of you new guys have not seen. So thank you again so very much, and I'll talk to you guys later.
The menagerie is for guests only.
Information. Let's get to it.
この放送はご覧のスポンサーの提供でお送りします。
Before I begin this video, I just want to give a quick disclaimer. This video is not about which Dragon Ball Z music you prefer or which one you like better or any of that stuff. This video is a completely unbiased look at the history of Falconer Productions and Funimation, and is meant as a historical and empirical informational tool, and that's it. So before understanding why Bruce Falconer and Falconer Productions will most likely not be returning for Funimation, you have to first understand why Bruce Falconer was even hired to begin with. And even though he was hired in the summer of 1999, the reason behind him working with Dragon Ball Z is a precedent that was actually set back in the 1980s. Let's go back, my friends, and I'll tell you a tale. In the modern era, anime has been accepted as being Japanese animation, and we all know where it comes from, the fact that it's dubbed into different languages, and we can even watch it in its original language subtitles should we choose to. But that's not how it was back in the 1980s. Even before Funimation got into the anime game, companies like Saban and Harmony Gold were notorious for taking anime and completely butchering it to hide the fact that it was from Japan. American TV executives were paranoid about viewers being able to handle something that wasn't American. And I know a lot of anime purists who hate this, but the suits at the television stations couldn't care any less, and definitely didn't back then. And it wasn't just the names that were changed. Shows were often left butchered in the editing room, with episodes being fused together or cut entirely, blood and gore being censored, entire plots were even changed and toned down for the younger Western audiences. Of course, the two most popular examples are probably going to be Voltron and Robotech, at least from the 80s, but this actually carried over into the 90s, and alongside Dragon Ball Z, You had Pokemon and Sailor Moon, the two Kingfish anime from the 90s, and even they were tremendously Americanized to the point where even the main characters' names were changed. Satoshi became Ash, Usagi became Serena. At least with Dragon Ball Z, Goku was still Goku, so we should be thankful for that one, right? But Dragon Ball Z still suffered from the same censorship and Americanization. So as a result of companies wanting to Americanize shows, many executives felt that even the original Japanese music had to be changed, and this is where the replacement scores came in. Tons and tons of 90s anime had replacement scores, including Dragon Ball Z. Now, in 1995, Funimation was not the same company as it would become and were somewhat, I guess, green or new to doing anime, and thus they outsourced a lot of their work. The aforementioned Saban Entertainment helped with the production, home video distribution went to Pioneer, and the voice acting and dubbing was outsourced to Ocean Studios in Vancouver, British Columbia, and thus this led to what will be referred to as the Ocean Dub Seasons 1 and 2 of Dragon Ball Z, which was our first exposure ever to DBZ in North America. Now, the music for those two seasons was composed by Shuki Levy and Ron Wasserman, the minds behind the music of Power Rangers, VR Troopers, and damn near every show Saban ever made. And Saban was a company, like Harmony Gold, notorious for taking Japanese shows, dubbing them, Americanizing them. They had been doing it for years, so naturally Funimation found a partner that was already familiar with getting stuff out to kids because Saban had been really successful with Power Rangers. So Saban's in-house composers was the first company to work on Dragon Ball Z's music, and when Dragon Ball Z started airing on Cartoon Network after having a failed syndication run, the series blew up. So whenever you see somebody on the internet claiming that Bruce Faulconer is the reason why Dragon Ball Z is popular, that is a fallacy. Dragon Ball Z was breaking ratings records before Faulconer was even hired. And the reality is that Dragon Ball Z was a hit no matter what. In other countries, Dragon Ball Z kept the original Kikuchi score and was tremendously successful. But you really can't deny the power of the Faulconer score in many people's minds as kids back then, but we'll talk about that later. So like I just said, Dragon Ball Z was aired in syndication in various markets at first and didn't really do well until it was on Toonami, and it blew the hell up, and as a result of that, Cartoon Network wanted Funimation to produce more episodes, but at that time, production on Dragon Ball Z had ceased. But once they saw how big it was, they had to bring in more episodes and continue the series. However, this time, Funimation shifted directions and made some adjustments. For Season 3 of Dragon Ball Z, things changed. Rather than have other companies work with Funimation to get these things out, Funimation brought everything in-house. In an interview that I conducted with Chris Sabat in February of 2016, Sabat outlined that one of the primary reasons for this change is because it became difficult for producer Barry Watson to have to fly to Vancouver to record with the Ocean Dub actors, so to cut costs, Funimation decided to go ahead and bring everything in-house in Texas and produce everything their own damn selves. And this is how guys like Sabat, Schemmel, Justin Cook, and these guys were hired to do Dragon Ball Z, and obviously it became a huge success, and they're still doing Dragon Ball Z to this day. That in-house Texas voice cast and everything that they did there is still the definitive English Dragon Ball Z crew, I guess you can say. No disrespect to anybody else, but that's kind of who's been doing the majority of the dubbing and will probably continue to in the future. Now, where does Bruce come in? Well, because Funimation and Saban no longer work together on Dragon Ball Z, that means that Shuki Levy and that whole crew couldn't work on the music of the series, and thus they needed a new composer. So who happened to live right around the corner in Dallas, Texas? That's right, Bruce Faulconer, Faulconer Productions, otherwise known as Cake Mix Recording Studios, which is where the Dragon Ball Z soundtrack, the Faulconer soundtrack, was produced that everybody remembers. But what many don't remember, or in many cases don't even know, is who actually did the music for the series. And yes, it was Faulconer Productions, but it wasn't just Bruce Faulconer. And a few of these musicians have been quite vocal about this, but we'll get to that in the next segment. In an interview with Black and Fist conducted in the summer of 2015, Bruce himself reveals that he was contacted by Funimation CEO Gen Fukunaga while working on a PBS special about hot air balloons. Faulconer was hired immediately to come in and do the music for Dragon Ball Z, starting with episodes 67, and he would continue to do the music all the way until episode 291. What he did not do was the first 2 seasons when they were redubbed. Faulconer Productions only scored Dragon Ball Z episodes 67 to 291 and a few bits here and there of some of the movies, and that's it. Nothing more. So if somebody ever tells you that they love a Faulconer score that isn't in one of those episodes I just named, it's either Nathan Johnson or Mark Menza, but we'll talk about that a little bit more later on. So Gen Fukunaga contacts Bruce, and he wants Bruce to produce music for Dragon Ball Z's replacement score for the new English dub, seasons 3 until the end of the series, and Bruce does it. And one of the things that Gen had asked Bruce to do was to make sure there was music playing at all times. This is one of the biggest criticisms of the Faulconer score, is that there's always music on, even in moments where there should be silence or drama. There's always music blasting. This is not Bruce Faulconer or Faulconer Productions' fault. He was just doing his job, and he does not deserve to be attacked for this. So let's keep it very fair. A lot of the vocal Dragon Ball Z community back then used to hate this about the music, and they would blame Bruce, and it really wasn't his fault. But those who knew that it was Funimation's call, they also...
Hey everyone, this video is meant to help out other content creators with their thermal testing and also explain to viewers why temperature testing with cases, coolers, CPUs is a lot more difficult than it seems on paper. This idea came about when I was watching one of Bitwit's videos, Kyle, about CPU cooler orientation, and it was a great idea. We've tested it in the past, quite a long time ago at this point, and Kyle had some interesting findings where he basically said that, look, here's the data I found, but I don't necessarily understand why the numbers are the way they are because I didn't expect it to be that way. And that approach, just to briefly state here, is perfect. You can't get a better approach than that to science when you're saying, look, I've done the testing, I've done due diligence to make sure it wasn't something weird as far as I know, but I don't fully understand the results. Here's the data, what do you think? That's a great way to approach it because the other options are throughout the data, which you don't want to do because there might be some really valid thing there that he's discovered that's not being discussed, or, of course, presented as hard fact, which also you don't want to do if you don't necessarily understand the data. So the reason I bring this up is because I have gone through that so many times in the last few years. Thermal testing, up until maybe the last year and a half for us, has been a major headache. There was a full year where we stopped doing case reviews at all with thermals in them because we were having issues, and then brought it all back after I was able to validate our new testing methodology in thermal chambers and really create some numbers that I finally trusted. And that was a hard process to go through. We've got videos detailing the thermal chambers, we've got videos detailing our temperature measurements, all that stuff. But I want to go through some of the more gritty details today, just as briefly as I can, because this is a Sunday video for us, which means I'm producing it myself. The other 2 guys are off today. Before getting to that, this is brought to you by our Patreon backers. Thank you to those of you who support us. You can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to help out. We've got a couple goals there. We've reached one of the most immediate ones, but we're pretty close to the next one. So do check out the site if you want to help out, gamersnexus.net or patreon.com/gamersnexus, and you can support us directly. So before getting into the details here, any content creators or anyone up and coming or established or whatever, if you're using any of the methods that we talk about in this video, give me a shout, because this stuff has been a long time in the making, years and years of work to kind of slowly figure it out, and it's expensive to do, and sharing with competition, obviously. We keep some stuff secret, but I'll put a lot of it out there in this content, just point folks our way. I would appreciate that. So let's go over some of the stuff on the table. We've got coolers that I've tested, we have tools, we have thermal paste, and we have notes of huge issues I've run into in the past that have invalidated data or caused major headaches that put us back weeks in production. And it's all mostly figured out. I won't put everything we do in this video because, one, obviously competitive reasons, but two, there's a lot to do. So our tests are fully automated, which helps. The script is internal only, but you could write your own script if you wanted to. The test environment, there's a few things that really matter here. One is ambient temperature, and we've talked about that in the past. Another one is the BIOS setting. Those are really critical, probably more than any other single aspect of thermal testing. So let's go with ambient temperature first. Room ambient, you want to control the temperature in the room as much as possible. If a thermal chamber is not available, we don't test in a thermal chamber, but we've validated in one, so the methodology is known good. And that's really all we needed for this type of test. For room ambient, just setting the thermostat is not good enough. So if you set your thermostat to say 20 Celsius, which is about what ours is, there's still going to be fluctuations. And some of it could be from vents in the ceiling. If a vent is directly over a test bench one day and you move it and it's not the next day, that actually does have a big impact. And two is ambient fluctuates, of course, because the thing's going to toggle on and off throughout the day, whether it's heat or forced air or AC or whatever, that impacts things. And there's really only one good way to control for that, which is going to be active logs of the ambient temperature. So as we've discussed before, we use thermocouple readers. There's a whole list of caveats with these as well. I'm not going to go into, these do take some training, but you use a thermocouple reader, you log the ambient temperature. Ideally, you also, if doing internal testing like Kyle did, would log the internal case temperature as well, and you do that on a second-to-second basis. So the idea is to create a giant Excel file, and it's work, but it's really accurate. You create a big Excel file. One column is the ambient temperature you've logged, other ambient temperatures or probes you've logged go somewhere else, and then you have your CPU column for either package or core, or whatever metric that you trust from the software, and that's a whole different thing too. So once you've created that, you can create a delta value, and this helps control for the fluctuation in ambient, whatever is happening up there from the ceiling vents or floor vents or whatever, you can control for that. That helps, but it doesn't fix all problems. And there are plenty of things there that are not quite so straightforward either, but we did discuss that in one of our previous videos. I'll put it in the description or something. So thermocouple readers help. We use K-types. They have about a 2.2 degrees Celsius range. If you're using multiples, you will want to calibrate them. Put it in ice water, put it in boiling water, see what the temperature difference is, and then you create an offset in the spreadsheet and just build a template around that. The next thing is really just BIOS. So CPU, the things that matter here when using an Intel CPU especially, it's important to disable basically everything. You disable C states, which are power saving states, disable EIST, speed step, speed shift, anything like that, disable turbo boost, then lock the frequency to a fixed frequency for all cores, and then lock the vCore as much as you can. And motherboards do have variants here. So the motherboard really matters a lot. As we showed in our 7700K review, you can have upwards of 20 to 30 degrees Celsius swings if using auto vCore with different motherboards, and even fixed vCores that you've configured. So fix all the voltage settings you can for the CPU. We do 1.28 or 1.275 depending on what particular cooler and CPU and bench we're working with. And that will fix almost all the problems immediately. So the reason that is because when you have a CPU, an Intel CPU says, I am going to boost as much as possible when thermals allow and when voltage and power supplies allow. So let's say the CPU is boosting. Occasionally it will either have, you might have the droop, whether that's from your voltage and power supply chain, or you could have just a frequency drop and voltage change up or down based on whatever's going on with the test process. And then of course AVX instructions also can really change things, so make sure you understand what those are too if using Prime 95 or something like that. But with the voltage supply, basically with the Gigabyte board we tested, you can see the voltage go up to 1.4 and then fall to 1.28, and if it's doing that throughout a test process, the temperature is going to be all over the place, and if you're averaging over, say, 1,000 cells of data, it's not good. And I can say that confidently because I've gone through that. I know how difficult it is. You're sitting there pulling your, in my case, many hairs out, wondering what the hell is going on? Why is this configuration that's clearly superior by all measures doing worse than this other one? So like an example would be if you tested two same company products, maybe a 280 versus a 120 even or something like that, some temperatures that are really close or unreliable. It's probably because of vCore and CPU settings. So all that needs to be fixed or turned off. And for anyone who says, well, then the CPU is not a real world scenario anymore because now it's not out of box, why would you test that way? Well, the reason is with thermal testing, we're not doing a CPU review. So you don't care about how does the CPU do these functions. All you care about is, how do I make the CPU a steady state? How does it do one thing, generate heat, and do that one thing with exceptional accuracy and make it reproducible every single test? The answer is turn all of that power-saving shit, all the turbo boost, and all that stuff off, and fix vCore. That fixes most problems. Next thing, fans. So the fans on the bench, whether it's open air or in a system, they should be connected to the power supply, and it should be a power supply with a voltage that you really trust. Because if there's fluctuations, again, if it's a cheapo power supply, it might swing from something like 11 to 12 volts, and that does change the fan speed. So that's important to know. I don't trust the motherboards generally to control my fans for me. Some of them do it just fine, but we've had too many issues in the past, so I go straight to the power supply. And what else can we do here? Software, my bold note on the sheet, software can't be trusted. And it's true for a lot of things. AMD, for example, if you're running AMD CPUs for your thermal benchmarks, good luck, because they use a different temperature scale, TCTL, and your temperatures with AMD for FX and FM CPUs, it will look like it can idle below ambient. That is impossible. It is not physically possible to have a lower temperature than ambient with any of these coolers on the table, any of these coolers on the table, whether it's air or liquid. And that's because the temperature that is ultimately being pulled through the radiator is going to be the ambient temperature. So it's impossible. So if you see temperatures that when you produce a delta value are negative, that means something went horribly wrong. It could be a negative 0.5, and that might be a calibration thing with one of these. Or it could be negative 5 or negative 10, and that's wrong. It's not possible. So that's an AMD thing, and that's not just AMD, it's the software. With Zen, this might change, but software pulls data from sensors in the chip, and you need to understand what values can you trust. For example, with Kaby Lake, it was kind of difficult with all the core temperatures and things. The software didn't work quite the way it has in the past for the immediate versions anyway. As they update, it might change. But for Kaby Lake, you want to use CPU package through hardware monitor because that's the same as XTU, which is obviously trustworthy because it's an Intel utility. So that matters. Make sure you understand which metric you're using and stick with it, whether you're taking all 4 cores or whatever and averaging them, or whether you're taking CPU package. I don't use cores with Kaby Lake. I use CPU package from hardware monitor or from Ada, and then just check it with XTU and make sure you're safe. So that mostly covers software can't be trusted as my bullet points. Software is also really important though. Once you've got a base understanding of it, turn on logging, run it for the entire test, and generate logs for everything, because it doesn't hurt to have more data. So we generate logs for CPU frequency, CPU utilization, I'm talking about this cooling testing obviously, vCore, all the voltages, all the power draw measurements, sometimes accurate, sometimes not, depending on the software and the CPU, and temperatures, and then dump everything into a spreadsheet. And the idea is, when you do have one of those scenarios where you're like, what the hell is going on here? I don't get it. You look through the logs and you can say, oh, why did the frequency just drop from 4.4 to 4.0? That's a problem. And so then you know where to start looking for the root cause. So log files are critically important for that. And there's a lot of other stuff. To kind of quickly go through the rest, multiple tests in the same location with the same configuration are important. So before embarking on any kind of cooler or thermal testing, build the test platform, change nothing, after obviously applying all these settings, change nothing, and run the same thermal benchmark, whether you're using Prime 95 or whatever else you want to use, Ada or any of those tools. Make sure the test runs are sufficient length to warm up and saturate the cooler and figure out where you're going to start averaging for the load and idle temperatures and things like that. And once you've run that test enough times, look at the data and try and understand, is it the same? What is my variance? And if you've got a variance of about a degree and you can't get any more accurate than that, which is possible, then it's time to add a little note to the charts and say, my temperatures have a variance of plus or minus 1 degree Celsius. And so then you can say, if we've got a cooler that's measuring at 51 versus another one at 52, they are effectively identical. You cannot do any further validation to prove that one is better than the other. And of course, functionally, they're basically the same anyway, even if those hard numbers are accurate. But if you've got a plus 1 minus 1 degrees Celsius change, then just make a note of that. ours is 0.5 or so after calibrating for the thermocouples and all of that stuff. The test environment matters too, so that would include things like thermal paste, open versus closed air. I'm not going to go into that today. There's a couple other things, CPU load, things like that. So let's go back to Kyle's situation. Kyle was testing in a system and he was using a utility that loads both the CPU, the GPU, and some of the memory. That was Unigen Heaven. And so when you're doing that, the potential thing to look out for is GPU workload, because now we could do all these controls I've already listed for the CPU, but now if you're involving the GPU, it gets a whole lot more complicated. We don't involve GPUs for cooler tests. For his test, it made sense. But you have to control for, one, it's got to be the same video card. So if you're changing coolers, pick a reference board, pull the reference cooler off, put it on whatever you're testing, use the same card, and then you've also got to control for, of course, like the frequency. You have to control for boosting. If it's a Pascal card, good luck. That's a lot more difficult. Control for voltage, fan speed, power draw, and temperature thresholds and things like that that could impact performance. Ideally, you fix the fan speed on the GPU. Ideally, you fix all fan speeds, which if I haven't mentioned it yet, that's the next most important thing after CPU voltage is every fan you must have a fixed speed for. No variance, no smart CPU fan header, no letting Windows or BIOS or the motherboard or the fan controller or the built-in software for the cooler try and control the fan speed. That ruins everything. You can do those tests separately, but not for the main benchmark. But back to Kyle's stuff. So GPU, the back of the GPU can radiate heat. When we tested the EVGA card for VRM temperature, we saw that we were able to get the backplate of one card up to something like 130 Celsius when we really, really, really tortured it beyond any reasonable measure by dumping 40 or 50 degrees Celsius air straight into the VRM fan from a liquid cooler. So the point is, the back of the GPU can radiate a lot of heat, and depending on how your cooler is oriented, that can impact the CPU temperature. Now, that's a valid test environment. That's a valid thing to look for, but it's got to be controlled and understood. So the example would be if you are radiating heat off the back of the card and you flip the cooler so that it is now oriented this way, it could be sucking hot air in through here, and that would actually increase your CPU temperatures because you're now you're pushing more heat through the cooler, and it's only got so much it can handle before it's kind of saturated. So that's something to look out for. Basically control GPU and everything else in the system. It's really annoying. Every single thing has to be fixed and you've got to log it. Run tests a million times and make sure you understand the variance for each particular component. Pretty annoying, but great once it works. Thermal paste. So we have thermal paste from the same batch that we know, same conductivity. All this is getting really, really gritty, not necessarily that important compared to all the rest because the variance is going to be small here, but once you've already done all the other work for all this other stuff, you might as well. So we use, with liquid coolers, thermal paste applicators. This makes sure that, we've got a video on it, when we apply the thermal compound to any liquid cooler, it's exactly the same. It's equivalent to coming straight out of a factory. And then fixed application method for your air coolers is important as well. And of course, there's all kinds of other variables. Curing time, technically paste can cure. We don't really account for that. That is one variable I don't care about right now because I've tested and it's not important versus all the other stuff to worry about. I think that covers the basics. Anyone thinking about thermal cameras, we've got a whole video on all the problems with using one of these. They're great tools, but it's another thing that you got to understand what it's doing. So I think that goes through most of it. I will add as many images and things as I can to this video. As I said, it's a Sunday video, which means I'm producing it myself. So hopefully just the knowledge will help. If anyone out...
You are not the boss of me.
So what's up guys, Eber here with Hurricane X, and after Intel launched their new Kaby Lake processors, I wanted to do a quick build around the Z270 platform. If you watched our full review of these new processors, you may remember that even though these new CPUs didn't offer massive benefits over Haswell or Skylake, users of older systems could benefit from increased performance and new motherboard features. If you haven't watched that video, we will leave a link down below for you to check it out. The intent for the system isn't anything particularly special. I just want it to look good, offer great gaming performance, and not cost an absolute fortune while still having the ability to overclock. But before I get into the components, a quick word announcement.
Introducing the new OCZ VX500 solid-state drives from Toshiba. It offers great, well-balanced speeds built with MLC NAND flash for superior endurance and is also backed by 5-year advanced warranty program. Learn more about the VX500 at OCZ.com.
This would be our first Kaby Lake build for the year, so I decided to make it a special one by going with a red and black color scheme, and the end result turned out to be beautiful, at least for me, but let us know your thoughts about it later on. Housing the entire system is the NZXT S340 Elite mid-tower chassis. Ever since my switch to the Fantex Enco Evolve ATX TG, tempered glass is slowly starting to become a trend, and personally, it's one of my favorite features of the case. I picked up the matte black variant with red accents, but there's also a blue-black model and a complete matte white edition which looks pretty awesome too. Dimitri has posted a fantastic review of the S340 Elite on the channel, and we'll leave a link down below for you to check it out. For the heart of this system, I chose the ASRock Z270 Fatality Gaming K6 motherboard. For just $180, this motherboard packs a ton of features like support for Optane, plenty of space for aftermarket cooling installation, a 12-phase digital power delivery system, USB 3.1 Type-A and Type-C ports on the rear I/O, and 4 DDR4 slots rated for 3866 MHz operation. There are also 2 MW slots, built-in RGB lighting alongside a dedicated LED header, and much more. Oh, also the red and black access color fit perfectly with our build. The processor of choice in this situation is the Core i5-7600K, which delivers an excellent price-to-performance ratio. Not only does it feature overclocking capabilities, but it holds up pretty well against more expensive options, particularly in gaming. Later on in the video, I'll be comparing the CPU's stock speed versus when it's lightly overclocked. This should give you a rough idea on performance increases with just a few tweaks within the BIOS or through ASRock's auto overclocking feature. Speaking of cooling, NZXT hooked us up with their spanking new Kraken X52 all-in-one liquid cooler. And while I know it's an overkill for the 7600K CPU, what I love about this cooler is its Infinity Edge mirror display right at the heart of the CPU block. It just looks gorgeous. Plus, with added features like RGB lighting and various lighting effects, it works out really well with the color scheme that I'm going for. Once again, we've posted reviews of both the X52 and the X62 on the channel. Links are all in the description. My choice for RAM went to Corsair's Vengeance LED 32GB DDR4 kit clocked at 3000 MHz. What interests me the most about this specific memory is obviously the vibrant red LED lighting. It also maintains a low profile design, which doesn't make a difference here since I'm using a water cooler, but anyone that wants air cooling should pay attention here. For the GPU, we decided to add the GTX 1060 Gaming X from MSI. This should yield us plenty of horsepower to test modern titles at 1080p, and to back that up, it sports a base clock of 1594 MHz and a boost of 1809 MHz in OC mode. It also features a stealth black backplate, which I appreciate, as it shares the exact same Twin Frozer 6 heatsink design with the GTX 1080 Gaming X GPU. And since this is a red and black base build, the card's lighting fits in perfectly with the system. Powering the entire build is the Corsair AX860i digital ATX power supply. With its 860-watt 80+ platinum rating, it can easily handle extensive upgrades in the future, and the platinum rating means it boasts awesome efficiency. One of the best parts is that with Corsair's Link software, I can monitor real-time power input and output, efficiency, fan speed, and internal temperatures. Corsair also hooked us up with their Neutron Series XTI 240GB SSD. This will be our primary boot drive for Windows and applications, plus it is categorized for extreme performance with read and write speeds well over 500 megabytes per second. The red enclosure is exactly what we need, and as you can see, the case showcases the drive really well. Building the whole system didn't take me too long, but I'm happy about the end result. The tempered glass on the S340 Elite beautifully showcases the components inside, and it's pretty hard to look away from a machine like this. The lighting isn't too fancy, but it's subtle and simple, which I'm always a fan of. So what kind of performance can we expect from a build like this? Well, let's start with Cinebench R15, a very popular CPU benchmarking tool, and as you can see, Overclocking the 7600K CPU to 4.9 GHz gives us more than 15% performance increase compared to stock speeds, which is great. I also rendered a 5-minute 4K video using Premiere Pro CC 2017, and the results do speak for themselves. While a 2-minute difference isn't that significant, rendering longer videos would increase the gap quite a bit. This 7600K is no joke, guys. But then again, if you're doing high-level rendering, something like the 7700K could be money well spent for its productivity increase alone. CPU temps surprised me after overclocking the chip to 4.9 GHz. At idle, there's almost a 9-degree difference between the two, and during my stress test, the X52 does a killer job cooling the chip well under 65°C. Gaming, on the other hand, didn't do much of a favor after overclocking the processor. This should be obvious given that model titles rely heavily on the GPU and partially the CPU. As you can see, Battlefield 1 at 1080p set to high settings yields us the exact same frame rates, but Overwatch set to ultra settings gave us an extra 15 frames per second due to the fact that it's operating at such a high frame rate. I did push the GTX 1060 to 1440p, and I'll admit this card deserves my respect for dishing out well over 60 frames per second. The card was benchmarked in OC mode, and it did a fantastic job both in Battlefield 1 and Overwatch. To conclude, I'm very happy with the way how this build turned out, given it costs $1,500 in components. The parts that we chose worked hand in hand to achieve the red and black color scheme that I was aiming for in the first place, and it looks gorgeous. Overclocking the 7600K gave me fantastic results, especially after rendering a 4K video. It's a pretty capable chip if you're building a budget workstation PC. So what do you guys think of our first Kaby Lake build for this year? Let us know in the comments down below. I'm Eber with Hurricane X. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
So what's up, guys? I'm Dmitry, and today I transitioned my system from a mid tower into a super tower, as I want to get into the mindset of what it feels like owning something that has so much potential for custom builds. This is the Phanteks Elite, the most expensive case we've ever worked with at $899. Now, to be honest, I'm actually quite surprised Phanteks decided to take this pricing route, because it's a massive leap from their previous most premium case, the Anthu Primo, at $299. So in this video, let's talk about the Elite, its price and its place on the market, its feature set and its ease of use, right after this sponsor spot.
Creativity is fueled by the best instruments. It doesn't always come easy, and in the process you often realize how important quality is. The RD400 by OCZ gives you quality and speed with M.2 interface, Toshiba NAND flash, and a PCI bracket, making it possible to focus on what matters. Invest in storage that makes a difference, with a 5-year advanced warranty.
So first, let's begin with the box, as receiving it sure feels completely different. It arrives in a flight case, a protective box mainly used for music equipment and large fragile items that requires 2 people to carry, because the whole thing weighs close to 50 kilograms. And here's me next to it for scale. Now the good thing is the case is reusable, of course, and Phanteks chose this packaging material over traditional cardboard to avoid damage on arrival. Now interestingly, these cases cost up to $500, but with Phanteks' own manufacturing, the price of the flight case has been reduced below $200, so it's not a significant portion of the total price you pay. The way you remove the Elite is to lay the flight case down, using the top foam piece as the base and lift the enclosure via the straps. Highly recommend you do this with 2 people to avoid back injuries, and then straighten the case so you can put away the flight case until further use. Just be mindful of just how large that box is, so ample of storage space is required. Now I want to talk about the price a little bit more, because it is so uniquely high. I mean, you could build a full system for that much money, and Phanteks has some strong competition already established, with case labs being more affordable for the high-end water cooling market. Now sure, there are a lot of difficult pieces in here, like the giant tempered glass side panel that swivels to open. That mechanism is not easy to implement, plus it has that ventilation built in for the bottom chamber, and there's a lot of complex machined 4mm aluminum on the exterior, that complements this high-end status of the Elite. Elite, including this giant rear side panel that is curved at the bottom, creating this beautiful character for display. It is also carpet friendly, as the premium aluminum piece at the bottom spans the entire length of the case, and the tall feet help with airflow intake. And so when you take in the Elite, it's like a long-term commitment, and I love what Fantex has done to balance functionality with luxury. So if you're used to mid towers like I am, be prepared to be blown away at the size of this superpower. It is incredibly tall, it's thicker than my Evolve ATX, and if I was to substitute to stay on my side, it looks a little bit out of place and perhaps needs to be placed on a small pedestal instead. For accessories, we have two boxes, one inside the bottom chamber